country, and what it takes actually to think about making a decision to go to grad school next year during these times of such uncertainty. And I tend to think, within our museum sector, as we all know, all of our arts and culture have been hard hit during the pandemic. But there's also been, an incredible growth of creativity during this time. And I think that one of the things we need, obviously, we've all learned a lot more about the use of technology and how they both facilitate great meetings and also great frustration sometimes. And, how museums, who traditionally are very much about objects, that whether those objects are, art or more of a natural history or a cultural object or a historical object, a lot of the focus is on objects and how does that happen in the digital world and how does that digital world change things. It's not that our faculty and certainly the Museum Studies program is not. There are students who come in and faculty that do research definitely with objects, and Dr. Dallas is going to tell you more about that. But certainly this is a time where a degree of museum studies within a faculty of information where there is great expertise and knowledge around technology, I think would be very beneficial myself. But I also think that it is a time where, being able to be a risk taker, being able to think ahead and being a futurist, all of those elements and how we can continue to preserve our history and celebrate our histories and culture during both the time right now, but the time ahead. The Museum Studies program is more than 50 years old, as you probably already have heard, and it is a very small program within a much larger faculty. So it is a program where every individual who is chosen to come into the program is, we will read your statement, we will look at your whole file, and we will decide about whether or not to make you an offer, and then you will decide whether or not to choose to take that offer. For some of you that are logged in from Waterloo or Regina or Calgary or Kingston or whatnot, I have every confidence that this time next year, we will all physically be back on campus. So I would like to welcome you, and I would like to, hopefully, I will all get to see you actually in person. So I'm now going to hand you over to Costis, where you're going to hear a lot more about our very exciting and very important Museum Studies program. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay. Professor Dallas?
So thank you very much. Thank you, Andrea. And thanks so very much, Professor Duff, Wendy, for being with us today and welcoming the students who are really interested in joining our program this year. I mean, this is a great opportunity for us and for you guys to be able to ask questions if you want on aspects of the program that are not clear yet from what you've seen on the website. But before that, I mean, what I'd like to do is to just offer a presentation of the program. As you probably know, the Master of Museum Studies program is the oldest program of museum studies in Canada, and one of the leading programs worldwide now in this area of museum studies. So I'm just going to I've just fired out the presentation actually, so Andrea is going to help us with moving from slide to slide. So my name is Costis Dallas. I'm an associate prof in the faculty. Feel free, if you have any questions, to ask me after the meeting, or if you have any further questions, to write to me via email, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The program's vision is to inspire international leadership in museum studies through integrated research, teaching, and professional practices. You see this combination of different things in this mission, in this vision statement that we have. Is research on the one side and professional practice on the other side that are pretty central to us in tandem. So what we try is to combine knowledge about the theory and the best practices and the emerging areas of knowledge on museums on the one hand, with professional practice on the other. And the mission is to develop innovative museum professionals capable of critical thinking, who contribute to communities by improving the relevance of cultural institutions and encouraging social responsibility. We strive to discover, apply, and communicate existing and evolving theories and best practices. So if you see the people who come and join the program, you'd see that predictably, the majority of people who come from the field of arts and humanities, 75% or so. But what is interesting, I think it's important to note, is there's also diversity. So we've got even a significant percentage of students, 12%, coming from science, technology, mathematics, all those areas of the sciences in general. We've got 7% of students coming from business and economics bachelor degrees, and even a 9% of students who come from other areas. So we celebrate diversity because we believe also that it's important that we have different perspectives for museums and within museums in order to be able to promote our knowledge and to promote what we think is innovative and consequential positive practice in the field. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So what are the academic and backgrounds then of faculty? They're also very diverse because of this emphasis that we have on multidisciplinarity and of multiple perspectives. We've got professors who come from anthropology, museum anthropology, from sociology, from classical archaeology. That would be myself, because my DPhil has been in classical archaeology in the past before turning to museums professionally and to the area of material culture studies. That is one of my areas of research. Art history, communication studies, food studies, and all these other disciplines that you see there. And in terms of our also competences as well, you'll find among our faculty people who are active curators themselves, who curate exhibitions, people who are involved actively in policy, who are involved actively in major initiatives that are taking place today in the field of museums in Canada and worldwide, for instance, in the area of truth and reconciliation and of restorative justice, and all those areas that are pretty much central in the museum sphere in Canada as well, in view of the relationships between museums and Indigenous First Nations communities. There's other areas really that are represented among our competences, and we've been involved in different things in the past, as you see in this list. I'm not going to just read the full content of this list. But this is something to bring in mind, that apart from people who work in our faculty as academics, whose job is to be academics, what we, I think we are really very strong at is really engaging within our faculty with people and involving people who have significant professional success in the field of museums. So several people who teach in the museum studies program today are actual professionals in the museum field, in major museums and important institutions in the area of Toronto, in the Greater Toronto area. And what we do, the reason that we do that we've got several people who work actually in museums and who are also teaching in the program, is because we think that the best way to be able to take the best that professional practice can offer today and to sort of gauge the actual challenges and the actual solutions that are being developed in museums is really to have this kind of blended faculty, people who are academics, but also people who are museum professionals and who work with us as adjunct faculty, as sessional instructors in the program. So this is more or less what I wanted to say about faculty, and talking now about the focus areas for students. The program has got a number of required courses, but it also allows students to develop multiple competences in diverse areas of museum practice. There is, of course, a strong challenge in intellectual and historical frameworks and contexts for museums in general, for heritage and the field of heritage. And this is why some of our courses really cover, our required courses cover those general, generic, foundational areas. However, what we also want is to be able to allow students, through a selection of elective courses And through planning their 2 years in the program with us, to develop specific competences and almost specializations. We don't call them specializations because we're pretty much flexible and we retain this notion of a unified program, but surely there is enough choice within our electives in order to allow people to make decisions so that they acquire stronger competences in areas such as, for instance, curatorial practice, collections, digital heritage, museum education programming, museum interpretation, in the area of exhibitions and programming, visitor research, museum management, even global aspects of museology and indigenous communities. And we recommend a sequence of courses that allow people to be able to acquire stronger knowledge in one of those areas according to each student's professional plans and orientation and interests. So in terms of the curriculum, I just mentioned that we've got 5 required courses that are the stronger, that provide the grounding for all students. And we've got also, perhaps it's a good idea to mention these programs, these courses, these required courses. There is one museum management course, leadership and management, ethics, leadership and management. This is one of the required courses. Another course is project management and fundraising, 2 specific areas that are really, really important across museums today, and that really offer also a lot of opportunities for employment in the museum sector. There is our critical contexts and issues in museums and heritage course, which is our foundational theory course. There is collections management, which is a 4th required course, and also there is our interpretation exhibition course, which is again covers the whole area of interpretation and communication within museums. And then many students, this is not a requirement, but many students, I guess most of our students, would choose to go and select to do the exhibition project, which is almost like a capstone course in our program. It takes 2 semesters, and in these students are able to develop a project from the beginning to end, typically in groups, and then they would be able to partner with specific institutions, both in the area of Toronto, but also elsewhere. We've had projects in the United States, we've had projects in the UK, and other areas in which this exhibition project has taken place. And despite the name, we call it exhibition project, but it's really a more general capstone project. Some students would choose to develop a program even in a museum, or some other students might even decide to work in the area, in an innovative area of applying, let's say, digital technology in a field that relates to collection. So while most of our projects are exhibitions, we're not really restrictive very, very much of what we ask there. The alternative to that is really to develop a thesis. And there are students who, for instance, are interested in joining museum studies in terms of scholarship, or become sort of professors and become academics, or other students who have an idea of a major research engagement as part of their studies. So we got the thesis option, which is our other option in that. And then there's electives, the many electives that people can choose from. Some of the names are here on this slide. Artifact, audience, text, writing in the museum is a new course that we offer this year. It's an important course because it allows students to be able to gain competencies in understanding how to plan, how to design, and how to write text for labels and for captions in the museum. And we know that interpretation in museums today in that form is a major aspect of the needs that we're facing in the profession. The digital museums, from strategy to implementation, a course that we've developed a couple of years ago in collaboration with the Ontario Science Centre, and this is really our collaboration that really propels that course ahead. It's pretty clear what the relevance of this course is. Visitor research course, museums and their publics, in which students have and the class has partnered with the Royal Ontario Museum, following up on the findings of their impact committees and assessment surveys in the museum, and to sort of try to understand, what are the needs and what are the ways in which visitors interact in the museum. Finally, public programs in education. And also there are electives, not just on our program. If you just look and browse our website, you see that's many elective courses also on the Master of Information side, the ones with INF initials in their code. And there are several courses that are relevant to museum studies. Our students have fruitfully taken, for instance, a user experience design for GLAM, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums institutions in the past, the one that introduces people to digital user experience and information design. And also there is a course on libraries, archives, and museums, intersections and tensions, that allows us to see what themes and practices emerge across libraries, archives, and museums. So moving on, the thesis project, I mentioned it. You'd see here that there's a variety of topics that students have engaged with in the past. One of our students, Lindsay Small, for instance, had a thesis on space museology and colonialism, and now she's a curator in the Air and Space in an Air and Space Museum. Strategies for sustainability in small Canadian museums, 3D printing as preservation of ISIS destroyed cultural heritage, queer museology at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, another student of ours, cultural policy and museum funding models in Eastern Canada. So there's a variety of themes that one can decide, and we are sort of welcome students who are, sort of inclined towards research and have the requisite competencies. We really welcome those to come up to us and suggest a thesis topic if they decide to go that way. And moving on to the exhibition project, there's also, here's a list of partners that we worked with. I mean, it's by no means complete at all. I mean, it's just a number of partners that are, sort of easy to consider in the area. Probably, the existence of these institutions. But as I said, there's dozens of institutions that we've partnered with in the past, and that we continue having fruitful collaboration relationships with them. And we can direct students to some institutions. Sometimes students would come themselves with an idea for partnering and possibly a possible partner. So we're happy to consider both scenarios for this a particular course, the exhibition project course. So there's some examples here from such projects that we've had in the past. Our students do create an exhibition that is actually sort of set and then opened in these museums, and visitors visit those exhibitions. It's really very, very much like an actual practice kind of course, this course, and it allows people to really test the waters with their own professional practice, and also acquire an important component for their portfolio, which comes handy when they go out to seek employment. Not to mention the fact, of course, that in some cases, some of the students who work with an institution will find ways, and the institution would want to continue and pursue a professional collaboration with those students. So there's several examples like that also among our alumni. And that's another one, the Uncovering Union project. If you want to have a look at what are these projects, you can go to displaydaysschool.toronto.ca, which is our subsite, our website that presents many of these projects from the past and from past years. So you go there and just browse, and you'll see the variety of projects that students have developed in the past years. So talking of internships. So internships are really an important component of our program. Again, I mean, it's not a requirement. We don't require people to do an internship. And sometimes, people who might already have, for instance, worked in a museum might currently be attached to a museum as professionals, because we get cases like that join us in the program, might not be interested in taking the internship. But for most of our students, for the majority of our students, I may say, they find internships to be an important and essential component of the program. Typically, people would start by, not typically, it's a requirement, people would need in the first year of their studies to take the course that we've set up as our preparation course for that. It's called the Emerging Museum Professional. As you know, emerging museum professionals are people in the first 10 years of their career. And there are specific things that one needs to be able to know. And this course is really geared in order to open these conversations and provide this support and this knowledge so that people understand the museum workplace as a workplace, and then also learn practical things. For instance, how to really prepare a CV, how to prepare a case, how to go to a meeting in order to seek employment in the museum field. And then after the end of this course, which is a prerequisite, then people can go to the internship course, which is a it's a 10 to 12 week placement. Typically, it would be after May, and sometimes it goes up to August. I mean, it's sometime in the summer between the first and the second year. As you probably are aware, the faculty does offer courses in the summer semester. Most of the museum studies courses tend to be in the winter or the fall semester. But at any rate, I just say that the major thing that our students would be doing in their first and second year of studies would be really to go to internship, unless they're doing a thesis, in which case they would do the research for their thesis, which would be the alternative typical scenario. And there's a diversity of institutions. I think Wendy mentioned that among our internships, we got paid. There are institutions that offer paid internships, and those are the more popular, this is to be expected. But then there are also other institutions that do not have the means, but still they're sort of worthwhile institutions that do offer unpaid internships. And it's all a matter really of gauging as well, you know, whether an internship would be located near or far. We are open, and some institutions are open to explore the possibilities of physical internship options. We all hope that the situation with COVID this summer will be such as to permit that and to allow that. But of course, I mean, in some cases, internships would also be allocated and would be sort of integrated within the working patterns of institutions in the COVID period now, which involves people working from a distance and working online in a teleworking scenario. So this will be monitored, and we will go with the flow and see how we can integrate students in the internships within the situation that will emerge in the summer and within patterns of actual work of those museum institutions that we work with. And obviously, these internships are tied to attainment of professional educational goals, monitored. There is a report at the end. It's important, really. It's an important step in the process of learning, and people who return in the second year typically are all that much the wiser, really, out of the experience of the internship. So the final thing that I wanted to say, really, about the program is really opportunities that you've got to reach out beyond the program, but within the program at the same time. So the first one, which I used to say this is the most, well-kept important secret of our faculty. It's not a secret anymore. It's a super popular option. Is the combined degree program, in which people would decide to do both the museum studies and the Master of Museum Studies and the Master of Information program combined. And they are able, instead of 4 years, they're able to do that within 3 years by a smart combination of electives and required courses on the two sides. So they fulfill the requirements from the two sides. In the first year, they would do one of the programs. Typically, many people would start with a Master of Information program, because then this would allow them in the second year to join the Museum Studies program and then stay with their cohort at the third year when they're preparing their exhibition project. But it's really an open decision, really. It's not something that is predefined. And this combined degree program, because it combines information on the one side with many different aspects of the MI program and museum studies, is typically ideal for students with interests either in the intersection between the two, museum informatics, digital cultural heritage, cultural information policy, or perhaps the union of the two as well. I mean, museum libraries is one case in point, or broader issues that really affect cultural memory institutions, including museums and archives. Digital curation that really spans also across these two areas. And of course, the use of social networking technologies. And 3 years is the minimum time to complete that option. And the final thing that I wanted to say, that it does reach outside the program, but still it's within. I mean, it doesn't involve really doing a third year. It's within the 2 years of the program. What we offer is collaborative specializations. And I happen to be the coordinator of collaborative specializations for the faculty. So if any of you decides to enroll in the program and sort of is accepted, and you are interested in collaborative specializations, or if you want to find out about collaborative specializations before applying, please get in touch with me. I'll be happy to offer you any information. So for the Museum Studies program, the Master Museum Studies program, we offer collaborative specializations in book history and print culture, in food studies, in Jewish studies, where there's also a small scholarship that is offered funding up to $2,000 per student, knowledge media design, and sexual diversity studies. And these are organized in collaboration with other faculties of the University of Toronto who have the specialist expertise in these areas. The whole idea there is that one needs to apply specifically also, in their application, they need to indicate that they're also applying for one of those collaborative graduate units in order to be accepted in the specialization. The process is separate from admission to the program. They need to be, in addition to being admitted to the program, they need also to be admitted to the collaborative specialization. Each of them comes with additional requirements. For instance, some of your elective courses will need to be taken up by courses in the area of the specialization. If you go for Jewish studies, they will need to have this central seminar for Jewish studies that you need to take. There is also additional courses, and if you that you need to take in that area out of your elective courses. If you have a thesis, then the topic of your thesis should be in the area of the specialization. If you do food studies, then and you do a thesis, then your thesis should be related to food studies. It gives you an idea of what it is. So this is more or less what I wanted to say, and I think that I've probably overrun my time.
No,
Yes, I've overrun my time.
No, you're okay.
I'm good. Okay, so this is more or less what I wanted to say, and please, I don't know if this is the time to ask questions, or we're going to come back to that later. Andrea, it's really up to you. I'm going to stay here with the session
so
anyway.
Thank you so much, Professor Dallas. He's still going to be here to answer your questions for sure, and feel free to ask questions in the chat feature as we're going along throughout the presentation. And if you think of any throughout the presentation, again, just keep noting it there. But we will move on, and I'd like to introduce you to Melissa, who is from the Museum Studies Students Association, and she's going to chat a little bit about the opportunities available there.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Andrea, for the introduction. As mentioned before, my name is Melissa, and I am the president this year and the faculty council representative for the Master of Museum Studies Student Association, which we abbreviate as MUSA. MUSA represents the Museum Studies and Combined Degree Program students in the faculty, and our main goal is to build a sense of community among both students, both Museum Studies and Combined Degree Program, through various professional development opportunities and social events. And we also work really hard to keep students connected with faculty and the larger museum community, especially since migrating online. We also have student representatives on MUSA's council who sit on committees within the faculty. So for example, the faculty council that I sit on, to ensure that student voices are always kept at the table, and so that we can report back to council and kind of disseminate information to the students, so everybody's always kept in the loop. All students are always invited to participate in our events and activities. So in the past, we've done things like behind the scenes trips to museums, which have been not as prominent this year, mostly because we're at home, but we still have done things like had guest speakers, held conferences and panels. We've done a lot of movie nights, trivia, and game nights, which have been really fun. And we also sell museum studies merchandise, and this year we were actually able to get some student submissions for the new artwork, so that was a really great opportunity for you to get involved in, for people to actually wear your artwork, so that was cool. In past years, we've also done some larger field trips. So for example, in my first year, so last year, we did a trip to Ottawa for a couple days where we got to visit a lot of museums. And a couple years before that, I believe the trip was to Montreal. So obviously because of COVID right now, we can't really do those things, but in a typical year, those are opportunities that you will have, and they're really great networking opportunities too. If you're interested in being part of MUSA's council, I know it's a little bit early, but if you're kind of thinking in the back of your head, we do have about 20 positions that we open during elections at the beginning of the school year, and there are specific positions available for first-year students. So those are things like the first-year representative, where you kind of act as a liaison between the student body and MUSA council to make sure that everybody's voices are being heard. And then a couple other positions too, like social media, there's event planning, and a lot of other things for you to get involved with. MUSA is a really great way to get involved with the program and the faculty. I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's also a lot of fun. It's a great way to kind of get a taste of different areas of museums. So for example, there's a lot of event planning, there's a lot of advocacy involved, which is a really great skill to have, working with faculty and also working with museum professionals. So all around, it provides a lot of opportunities that I think is sort of unique to the faculty. I also wanted to give a quick mention to another student group that has recently been created within our faculty, and that group is Museum Professionals of Color, which we abbreviate as MPOC or MPOC. MPOC was formed by 4 students in our cohort earlier this year, and they exist to advocate for greater representation for people of color, both in the program and in the greater museum field. They've been crazy active in the last year, doing really amazing things with museum professionals all around the world, including panel discussions. They've published some articles and planned a lot of really great wellness and diversity focused events and discussions, as well as social media campaigns. They're super cool to check out with, and I believe there may be opportunities to get involved with them as well. I'll drop all of their contact information in the chat, as well as Musa's contact information. But yeah, Musa is just a really great opportunity to get involved and kind of build some relationships in the faculty and with your peers. I'll share all of our social information and my personal contact information. And I'll also be around in the Q&A session later. So if you have any questions about Musa, getting involved, or any other museum related things, I'd be happy to answer. And again, I'll drop my email, and feel free to email me with any questions. So thank you very much. And I'm excited to get to see some of you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Next, we have Jamie. Jamie, there we go, from Musings.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie. I am a second-year museum studies student, and I'm also from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan originally. It's cool to see some other people from the province and the prairies here today. And so I'm here to talk about Musings. It was created in 2014 by one of the professors in the faculty, Dr. Irina Mihalke, and she created it to provide a platform for opinions, critiques, and discussions of contemporary museum practices by emerging museum professionals. And since then, it has grown quite significantly. We have an abundance of columns that people can write for everything from food in museums to Indigenous history and culture in museums to clothing in museums. We just have a bit of everything, and it allows students to explore their interests in a new way that may not be explored fully in class. It also is non-academic, so you don't need to do footnotes, so it's a great way to practice approachable writing, especially for a larger public, and get your articles published on a public platform. And it's also great, I found, for resumes. When they ask for a writing sample, you already have a whole bunch of great edited work published on Musings. So we are a great opportunity led by Musa now and completely student run. And I will drop our website link in the chat so you can read our columns, see a little bit about us. And similar to Melissa, I will be in the information session later, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much, Jamie. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up to you. So if anybody has any questions for Professor Dallas or any of our students, please feel free to write it in the chat box. And I'm just going to also share with you the next the agenda for the rest of the day, but definitely feel free to ask your questions. And that could be admissions related, program questions related, careers related, student life related. So, you know, some things that maybe some advice from our students. No, so if you decide once, for example, if you're in the MI program and then you decide once you're in the MI program that you want to do the MMSt program, you can still apply while in your first year of the MI program to the MMSt program. And it's because the two programs alternate. So as Kostis already mentioned, your first year is usually the MI program, your second year the museum studies, and then the third year is a combination of both. So you can certainly still apply to the museum while in your first year of the program. Yeah, so if you are applying both to the museum studies and the MI, you are required to write 2 separate admissions essays. So you want to speak to your interest in both of those programs separately. Certainly you want to talk about your interest in the combined program, but you want to make sure you're speaking to those specific program that you're applying to separately. So we do require 2 separate personal statements. You are able to use the same references. Just make sure that you are letting your referees know that they should be addressing their reference to the program that you're specifically applying to. So you will have to enter their email addresses in your MI application as well as your MMST application. Again, they can be the same people, but they will have to submit it twice, essentially. Your transcripts, you're going to upload as mentioned in this morning's session, you're just going to upload a copy of your unofficial transcript to both of those applications. And then if you're admitted to the program, we will require an official transcript. At that point, we only need 1. So you don't have to request 2 official transcripts at that point. And then again, 2 resumes. Yeah.
Andrea, just to make sure that I understand well, I mean, obviously, I mean, you can apply to the Master of Information and then be admitted to Master of Information, and then in the first semester say, I want to do the combined degree program, so I will also apply for the combined degree, and this is possible. But my understanding, of course, is that you can't apply to the Master of Information, be admitted to the Master of Information, and then say, instead of the Master of Information, want to switch to the museum studies, right?
Right, exactly.
Or is it? Yeah. I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
No, you would have to submit a separate application to the museum studies program.
Correct. Yes, because the 2 application processes, as we just said a couple of minutes ago, are separate in a way.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Shall I take that?
The exhibition. So yes, yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, yes. In most cases, I mean, there's going to be an arrangement with an institution. So exhibitions will have at least some of the costs, to a certain extent, will be covered by the institution. There are cases in which students would require, extra money for an exhibition, and there've been cases in which the faculty has considered supporting, to a modest extent, the process of certain exhibitions. Also, some groups will fundraise and will be able to fundraise effectively. But Cesar, I mean, the thing in general is that all our exhibitions, typically, do take place, and people manage to find ways, to be able to fund them, typically through the institutional arrangements and working with the institutions. I mean, this is at least my sort of feel about this question.
Right, and usually the host organization will help with those costs as well. And as I wrote in the chat there, it is September start only, so we don't have a January intake.
To the question by Jill, I mean, of course, I mean, you can have the same reference letters in both, but what I would advise is that you make the statements really that you produce for these 2 applications are attuned to the program. So you don't just copy what you wrote for the MI and just copy your statement for the MMST, because what we want to know on admissions is whether you really have an affinity with museums, whether you have good reasons to be able to. I do need to know, what is the reason that you'd apply for the actual program. So my recommendation would be to do write separate statements. However, you're not supposed to be writing original essays for this application. I mean, typically you'd, hark back to the work that you've done in your previous degree, and you'd submit those. And what you want is really to submit a sample of written work that really represents you best for each of the programs. So while you have to share the references, of course, you can't ask different references. I would suggest that this is a good option. This is my understanding. I don't know, Andrea, do you think that this is good advice, or would you like to add something?
Let me actually jump in real quick. Sorry, this is Stephanie, and I serve on I'm our Assistant Dean, Registrar Island Student Services, sitting in on the PhD admission committee and our master's admission committee. So maybe at the PhD level, you would want to be submitting written work or prior, let's say, essays or those kinds of things that reflect your work from your degree programs prior. At the master's level, however, the essays really should reflect the questions in the admission area. And so specifically this year, they were revamped, especially the second question that we ask of you. We are seriously considering people's commitment, understanding, and self-awareness within the admissions process. Things like equity, diversity, inclusivity, ability to communicate effectively, work together in teams, ability to understand areas maybe potentially for improvement or challenges you've faced historically that have updated or changed the way in which you now perceive your fit within academia. Those are going to be those pieces within the application essay that we want to hear and see. They've specifically been crafted extensively with work from students, faculty, and staff to ensure that we're creating the opportunity for applicants to share in their own words their strengths, their weaknesses, again, their ability to identify areas of growth and areas that they've had growth since maybe they've had an academic or professional experience since their undergraduate degree. So, you know, just submitting an essay or something from the undergraduate program wouldn't actually answer those questions generally. However, it may have been you did one of those and it was a terrible, terrible experience, and you've learned from that experience kind of professionally and academically what's more grounded or what's more appropriate, and how that has grounded you in wanting to pursue a degree. The other thing I would strongly recommend, and we do have students that frequently have quite large blemishes on their undergraduate experience, but it was possibly due to needing to financially support their family during an undergraduate degree. Please explain those things. Those are as tremendously important as those of you who got straight A's. Everybody learns from those experiences, and everyone can enrich our academic environment by sharing those experiences. So please consider being as open and honest within that process, so that as an admissions committee, we can determine, you know, what is it that you can bring? How can that perspective differ from those who, again, maybe had the straight A's, not to just pick on those excellent students, but diversity of thought, opinion, background, perspective. Those are the things that make this community so rich, that make your discussions in classes so dynamic. And that's really what we're seeking and have crafted by providing those opportunities and those questions.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Thank you for correcting this. It's absolutely true. And just on the matter of equity, diversity, and inclusion, I think I just want to reinforce the fact of how committed this faculty and this program is to these principles. And actually, we launched a course this year exactly on equity, diversity, and inclusion in museums, and we're hiring faculty in that area. And I just want to say that this is a significant dimension of our pedagogy and what we're looking for as well. I mean, we're looking for this emphasis.
Yeah, and one more piece with that, as part of our initiatives around supporting equity and diversity seeking candidates, we have earmarked admission awards for those of you who fall into those traditionally underrepresented populations where maybe or maybe not finances have been a struggle, and we do want to hear from you if you would like to be considered as a BIPOC candidate, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color. If in fact you would like to explicitly state something within your application essay, that will make it tremendously, I guess, easier, for the application committee to ensure that you're strongly considered in those areas as well. So please, express that identity with pride. We are happy to hear of those experiences. we are working to have a question that's optional integrated into the updated admission packet that will be, we're getting a new admission software, so that would be something I'm actually currently working on. So in future years, it may be something that can be explicitly identified by candidates in that process. But for now, if you want to encourage or express that experience within your essay, that would be something that we would appreciate from the admissions committee if I said, as I said, if you're comfortable in doing so.
It looks like there's a question from Caesar regarding international exhibition opportunities. Costas, did you want to talk about that?
Yes, indeed. I mean, okay, in the past, as I mentioned in my presentation, we've organized a number of projects like that. Our students organize projects in London and in other places as well in Europe. I mean, I remember a few years back, we had students, for instance, working with the Acropolis Museum in Athens. Typically, such proposals would come from the student, and sometimes faculty will be able to assist with making the contacts and everything, but in most cases, it will be the student who has an idea about working with an international organization, an organization that is located in another country, I mean, a museum somewhere else. And I think we're welcoming all these projects, but in some ways, we have to consider whether the instructor of the exhibition project, our prof that is really sort of working with students on their exhibition, feels comfortable in establishing appropriate liaison with the professionals in that museum so that the supervision of the exhibition project can really happen appropriately. So it is possible, but it will need approval by the instructor that teaches the exhibition project course on our side. This is a general response. But there's been several projects like that in the past, so I see no reason why this would not be considered in the future as well.
I'm going to give just one more update in regards to, because I think the question will be coming. Do we know, or does the university have a prediction as to the delivery method for courses in the fall of 2021? And we are consistently having those conversations with a variety of colleagues here on campus to ensure that we're examining all aspects, both near and far, knowing that many of you logged in from around the world today, knowing that many people have ongoing health concerns, and paramount to the educational components of this are everyone's safety and understanding what can be in the best interest of the health and well-being of all of our faculty, staff, and students, as well as creating the richest academic environment possible during the times of a pandemic. And so conversations right now are pointing to the fact within the province of Ontario, we do have plans, not us as a university, but as a province, that by the end of September, they are aiming to have anyone who would choose to be vaccinated have a vaccination. So using that as a bit of a guide, knowing that our term usually starts at the beginning of September, that may be a reason why we would be looking at, say, a hybrid model of delivery into the fall term, meaning that those of you who would be comfortable being on campus definitely should aim to be here. Those of you who still may be facing issues, say, either whether it be wanting to obtain the vaccine in your home country or in your home province and not having yet had that opportunity, we will be taking all of those things into consideration when looking at delivery mechanisms. We also work on a consistent basis with the federal and provincial governments around entry into Canada and take those things into consideration when making final decisions. So although I can't say we have a final decision, I do want to clearly articulate to you the approach that's taken by the university on both a local, within Toronto, provincial, and federal level to ensure a good, safe, healthy environment for all participants in our learning community. So although I can't tell you we'll be, in a hybrid model 100%, or we'll be in person 100%, or whatever 100%, do know that as soon as we have any sort of decision made at an institutional level, we will be letting our applicants know, and we will be letting all of our current students know as well, of course. So more to come on that. We do know even now, students that are international students who choose to move to Canada to pursue education are supported in the 2-week mandatory quarantine period on campus. That's available free of charge as a service that the university provides. I suspect if the borders continue to be closed, that would be something that would continue to be offered at the institution. But please do not hesitate to connect with us if you have specific questions. We also have a Center for International Experience who is at the forefront of these conversations as well. So never hesitate to ask us. And again, we will communicate out as much information, whether it be definitive or speculative, regarding projected delivery mechanisms as things move forward closer to fall of 2021.
Great. Thank you. So we have a few minutes left, and before we move on to the next session, I just wanted to make sure everyone knows the agenda for the rest of the day. Our next session is going to start off at 11:45, and it's the Double Blue Fast Track Admission sessions. For those of you who are in the session are also interested in the MI session and are currently a U of T student or alumni, you can attend the Double Blue session. And then 12 o'clock, the MI admissions and careers presentation is going to start as well. Here is a link to the event, again, for the virtual online events platform, and that's how you'll be able to access all of the live sessions, as well as any additional resources that you want to have a look at, so videos and brochures. And then we're going to have our MI program overview session starting at 12:45, as well as breakout sessions for each of our concentrations. For those of you who are interested in talking more to some of our students, our mix and mingle session is going to start at 2:30, and then we're going to have 2 tour time options available for you, so one at 11:45 and then another one at 3, depending on what fits your schedule best. So I am going to leave it at that, and thank you all again very much for attending today. If you are signing off, thank you very much for attending, and thank you to our speakers today, Professor Dallas, Stephanie Rose, and to our students for joining today and providing us with such useful information, and we hope to review your application soon, and hopefully see you in September if you are admitted to the program. And again, please feel free to join the rest of the sessions today if you're interested. And of course, continue to ask your questions if you have any for the next couple minutes. So to answer your question about how many students are admitted to the Museum Studies program, we admit roughly around 40 students a year to the program.